Welcome back. It's a good night for a story. We'll keep you company. Thanks for listening and or watching. Now, tonight's tale. In humanity's first ever interstellar civil war, nearly all society is dependent upon artificials like Inspector Lazareth, a 3.5-foot tall robot. A cross between Sherlock Holmes and R2-D2, he investigates homicides in Underborn, farthest colony from Earth. Lazareth, and a case of an innocent murderer. Chapter 1. Detective Brickenhouse was as tall and bald as he was youthful and husky. Poor bloke had bid farewell to his hairline first morning of puberty. But even with a permanent cue ball, he was one of the luckiest 19-year-olds alive. While all his mates were sowing their wild oats, Detective Brickenhouse was wedding his high school sweetie. Couldn't risk letting her get away. Loved her too much. If ever there was a testimonial for following your heart. All his buds got drafted into the effort and were now on the front lines, liquefied or incinerated. It stuck deep in the craw of Detective Sandbrush that Chief Ryland left a teenager in charge of the department while on vacation. Detective Sandbrush wasn't old, mind you, 31, but still. 3 males left at Central, and he leaves the kid in charge? He presumed it was because of societal snobbery. Detective Sandbrush was the only guy in the office with no brats at home. He'd been injured on duty just as war broke out. Never did catch that carjacker. At any rate, exempted. "Ryland wants you on this armored truck heist, Slattery," said Detective Brickenhouse, sliding a digital folio across the chief's desk. Yup, that was his name, all right. Slattery Sandbrush. "Naugahyde, this gym break-in is you. Get in a little treadmill whilst you're over there. And I'm sending you out for the long haul to Bioy, Lazareth." Detective Sandbrush practically fell over. "Bioy? Give me that!" He snatched Lazareth's case away from his fingered claws. "You gotta be kidding me! You can't send scrap for this!" Scrap. Didn't trust artificials for spit. Been lumped in with synthetics after the incident. But unlike synthetics, artificials were as passably human as your garden-variety microwave oven. Problem was, both could think. Ace any quantum trilobe test with flying colors. Plenty of humans couldn't do that. If it wasn't real intelligence, it was close enough to give most folks the willies. "Can't fly, Slattery, not with that limp," objected Detective Brickenhouse. "Bioy is a tad outside our jurisdiction, don't you think?" Lazareth spoke up. But before he could get an answer, Chief Ryland came scrabbling in with arms helicoptering over a fly-fishing hat flush with bobs and lures. "Cheryl, Gladys, get in here! This is it!" "Chief?" said Detective Brickenhouse, flabbergasted. "Forgot something?" asked Cheryl and Gladys as the uniformed ladies entered a now overflowing office space. Too much for shy Naugahyde, he made a quick, quiet exit. "At long last, we finally have meaning. We're not alone," bellowed the chief, now spotting Lazareth in the crowd. "You doubter! You said it was never going to happen." "I did," said Lazareth. "And you left a week-long cruise after only an hour to tell me this?" "I'm still leaving. 10 minutes, Ryland explained. "But this news—" "We already know. Bioy, alien temples, or some such nonsense," added Lazareth calmly. "Highly improbable. Do you have any idea how complex an alien prokaryote cell would be? To say nothing of an alien eukaryotic cell. You lot haven't even been able to build the simplest molecular parts yet." "We built you," sneered Detective Sandbrush. "Let me go, Ryland." Scrap is going to embarrass the department talking like this in front of all those learned men out there. Told you about calling him Scrap, the chief warned. Detective Sandbrush grimaced. He was undersized, but was sure he could take his boss when time came. Speak of the improbable, continued Lazareth. Bioy's already had its very first murder. Fancy that. Ryland cupped his hand over graying patches of a mostly reddish mustache, solemnly removing his flamboyant hat. Chapter 2. If you had the lather for it, teleport drives could bounce you around a colony in a literal blink of an eye, even one as vast as Underborn. But reaching other star systems, or deeper, was a whole other bag of bees. For this, you'd need to see your reflection in a time mirror, strip of annealed space glass longer than a goodly-sized continent. Blinking anywhere near one was enough to earn you capital punishment. No, really, time mirrors gave space-time volatility new meaning, as did the men responsible for them. For this reason, approach vectors had to be done at or nearly at light speed. Might as well have been riding atop a snail shell. Lazareth would be aboard the battle liner UMDD Maelstrom for 2 weeks or better before they even got into range. He'd heard plenty about time mirrors. Day sailors and pleasure cruisers used to sell tickets during peacetime. But the military annexed all these beasts in the wee hours of this first ever interstellar civil war. Top priority for both sides. Reds took half, Greys took the other. This starcraft's main berth was cavernous. More polished, wood-appointed paneling and beveled 100-foot colonnades than you could shake a stick at. Cathedrals of war for the new bird admirals. Bridge, engines, weapons, every compartment was a bloated gyrosphere rolling around like a marble inside a larger marble. Been designed this way to deaden impact trauma. Plus, no matter how badly you were spinning or which end was up, your orientation was always bubble level. Better than the Gatherbury Hotel, bemused the inspector, pulling a little wheeled suitcase behind him. He soon found his way into a crowd of no less than 100 personnel abreast. Here he caught the attention of an overly ambitious youngster. "Hey," said Duty Officer Lester, "what in tarnation you need luggage for? You better have some tree-high clearance, and I do mean skippy." Couldn't have been 13. Mustache had less hair than Detective Brickenhouse's scalp. Lazareth flashed a digital badge over his display face. "Inspector Lazareth, UPD has cleared me to catch a ride with you out to Bioy." "Bioy? Got no private cabins for you. You're going general if you're going at all," insisted Duty Officer Lester. "Well now, believe it's already been paid for by my department," replied the inspector. This fuss magnetized a gathering storm of troopers, including Chief of the Watch, Hickson. "What's the deal here, Duty Officer?" "Sir, ain't no way we can justify giving away private cabins to Scrap. We're 2 in a can as it is." Hickson scanned a digital duty roster. "Yeah, you're not wrong. This wardroom alone looks like 10 hotel lobbies," Lazareth pointed out politely. "Worst comes to worst, I can sleep in that corner over there under the planter." "Against regulations," barked Duty Officer Lester. "Look, mister," said Chief of the Watch, Hickson, "best I can do for you is an Airbus chair. Otherwise, you're bedding with baggage." The inspector got shuffled off like a convict to triple decks of non-enlisted seating. 3 rows by 3 seats for a grand total of 999. These were all the civilians that couldn't swing dining with the captain, beechwood bourbon, and billiard balls. Upside would be access to sleep pods, a few hours a night to stretch your legs. There was also a mess hall and kitchen, weight room and showers going 24/7, if you didn't mind sharing with 150,000 men and boys. A pleasant young blonde took Lazareth's steely fingers betwixt pretty painted fingernails. "It's all so exciting. I'm with the Institute. We're all bound for Bioy, too." He had no trouble placing her accent, native Ceres. She was with some think tank tapped to write glowing copy for this alien dig. Inspector Lazareth, he greeted.
Professor Yvette Carrington, she replied. At long last, we're about to discover our place in this cosmos. Oh, who would ever want to declare another war?
Did you say inspector? Asked a goateed man leaning over his seat back. I'm Fabian, Dr. Andre Fabian, archaeology. Are you investigating the murder?
Murder?
Said the professor with a pained expression.
Oh, please, not Bioy.
Afraid so, ma'am. The inspector regretted to inform her.
Yvette, it splashed all over the news,
explained Dr. Fabian. She sighed dramatically.
For the first time, we're about to explore a non-human civilization's library of the stars, poets, lovers, artisans.
Our species kills so often we have to make machines to try and stop us, observed Dr. Fabian.
You're so vulgar. Gene, make him stop,
said a plump, bespectacled lady. Lenora Ewing, xenogeology. A slight, older gentleman chewing on an unlit meerschaum made his way over. He was both dean and president. That'll do, Fabian. Name's Ewing. Just call me Dean Gene, Inspector. Wouldn't you agree with me that this situation on Bioy could just be a tragic accident? Lazareth was already positive it was murder in the first degree, but he couldn't bring himself to say it, not with that look in Professor Yvette Carrington's eyes. Know a lot more once we get our feet on the ground. Gene Ewing nodded approvingly. Here, here. Now I say we all just try and relax for the next 336 hours.
Gene, his wife complained. The people in that section over there are pointing at you.
Indeed, many faces from several aisles back appeared quite cross, all of them clad in yellow sweaters tied at the neck like winter scarves. Some biotech academy judging by their youthfulness and matching logos. Oh, please, I'm not going to light it anywhere in this star system, said Gene Ewing, waving his pipe about. Spoiled children, really. As voices and tempers began to percolate, the inspector rolled over and tuned out. It was going to be a long 336 hours, but at least no one had brought a colicky newborn. Tender mercies. Chapter 3. At 3 a.m., Lazareth stirred. There was a commotion at the lavatory. A considerable queue was overflowing down the aisles. For some infernal reason, Duty Officer Lester had decided to kick on the seatbelt lights and restrict this whole section to their chairs. Now the number of available toilets for these non-enlisted passengers was exactly 1. This having zero bearing on the inspector, he plopped over and ignored it. Not 2 minutes later, somebody pulled a fire alarm. If the previous scene was a dust-up, this was a full-on brawl. Hurt feelings having already been primed over toilet privileges, fists were now flying every which direction. Lazareth unbuckled and stood up, ducking back down an instant later to avoid a careening shoe. Chief of the Watch Hickson cut loose with an air horn built into the housing of his bullhorn. Want a personal latrine, huh? Come on down with me to one of our shiny new brigs. I'll fix you up. Now fess up. Who tripped that fire alarm? Me, sir, said Duty Officer Lester, saluting powerfully. There's been a fatality, sir. Chief of the Watch Hickson had recently imbibed a healthy dose of double espresso. His lips were no more than 6 inches behind the inspector's left shoulder. So was his breath. Chief of the Watch Hickson, would you pass me those cotton balls and disperse that crowd out there, please? Sure, the man replied from just beyond the cramped lavatory stall. Petty officer, get these people back to their seats. Get them some grub and a free movie. Rigor mortis was making fast work of Professor Yvette Carrington's hanging body, ruby-red high heels dangling 2 inches off the floor. COD was a plastic ligature woven through the aluminum slats of an open ventilation grate in the roof tiles. The coffee aroma returned shortly. Want you to know just how much Captain appreciates Homicide helping us out here, whispered Chief of the Watch Hickson in hushed tones. Happy to help, said Lazareth. And I know once this is solved, you'll get me that private cabin duty officer Lester denied me yesterday."
"What? Oh, yeah, of course," the man swore. "Just between you and me, this gal off herself or what?"
"Or what?" replied the inspector, depositing fingernail swabs into a Freon collection cylinder. He could process a scene just as efficiently as the mechanicals. That wasn't the issue. They'd all been freeze-dried and slow-packed, and that included all their specialized forensic equipment. "Would you please see that all evidence gets into cold storage, including the professor herself?" Chief of the Watch Hickson nodded.
"Where are you off to, though?"
"Got a lot of interviews to conduct, and it'd really improve my workflow if the duty officer could find it in his heart to lay off the seatbelt restrictions." After a few hours of examinations, it seemed everyone had been too sleepy to have paid any mind to the comings and goings of Professor Yvette Carrington. Security recordings pinpointed her whereabouts 30 minutes before the fire alarm. No one had followed her to the lavatory door. She was alone. Very unlikely someone was waiting inside either. One barely fit. Suicide wasn't top of mind for Lazareth. While she could have strung all those zip ties together, he hadn't detected any fingerprints on the makeshift noose. Also, her 50 kilos would have ripped those aluminum slats right out of the ceiling. So how had she managed to get zip ties over an air duct to support her weight? Had she stood on the toilet seat and propped open the ventilation grate? She was maybe 5 foot tall with those ruby red high heels. And that wasn't all. There was the distinct likelihood that this case had claimed 2 victims. Professor Yvette Carrington had checked unpregnant on her boarding disclosures. Only there were test results in her purse from a doctor's visit a week ago. They told a different story. The inspector had the Maelstromos medical examiner double-check her blood work just to be sure. Now, since this fact alone couldn't prevent a woman from flying, perhaps she was trying to keep the test results a secret, or was being asked to. Military medicine was all about patching bullet holes, but limited DNA testing was available for identifying soldiers' remains. Might come in handy if there was a paternity candidate or two. "Suicide, guaranteed, Captain Brubaker." "I'd give you accident first," said Lazareth, looking about the most stunning bridge he'd ever been on. Had to be at least 50 officers and yeomen buzzing around in here. Could do jumping jacks and not come within 3 feet of anyone. The man frowned. "Now what makes you say that?" The inspector leaned in. Statistically speaking, expectant mothers aren't likely to commit suicide. "Don't even have to be sad out here," Captain Brubaker tried again. "I call it getting a case of the space monkeys. Someone just goes bananas." The man sidled over with a digital document. "Why not sign on that bright blinking line right there? Get that private cabin going, no sweat." Tempting offer. Military didn't work out. This chap could make it huge in sales. Lazareth held his fingered claws at his display face. Unless space monkeys grow you a foot taller, I'm dubious she got herself into that position. Captain Brubaker grunted. "You're telling me there's a murderer on board my ship?" "Just keep my private cabin warm, Captain. I'll have something for you soon." Chapter 4. "I'm terribly sorry for the loss of your esteemed colleague," said Lazareth. "What was her post at your institute?" Dr. Fabian and the Ewings joined the inspector around a long table of tea and braided shortbreads. Captain Brubaker had cleared out a conference suite for ongoing questioning. He'd also approved unfettered usage of enlisted lavatories all the way to Bioy. "Orthography," replied Lenora Ewing, drawing one of the shortbreads as if it were a game tile. "Such a lovely girl, such a bright future. Why would she ever do this to herself?" "How could she ever do this to herself?" replied Lazareth, now turning to her husband and Dr. Fabian. "Institute is full of some of the brightest bulbs around. Can you gents think of any way the professor could have reached up that high to hang herself?" "Any way? Have you experimented? How high is the roof?" inquired Dr. Fabian. 8 feet, floor to ceiling, answered the inspector. Suppose if she were determined, said Gene Ewing, rubbing chin whiskers. Suppose she might have... Mrs. Ewing, interrupted Lazareth, would you be so good as to go rouse the M.E. for me, please? The woman pointed at herself with surprise. She left the table flustered, swiping a few more braided shortbreads before heading out the door. The inspector retrained his gaze upon Dr. Fabian and Gene Ewing. At the risk of putting too fine a point on this, Professor Yvette Carrington was pregnant, and I believe one of you two was the father. The men swallowed so hard in tandem it appeared as if both had just ingested anvils. "Outlandish allegations!" exclaimed Dr. Fabian. "How dare you!" decried Gene Ewing. "She got her results back from the doctor's office dated a week ago," Lazareth explained calmly. "What's that to do with us? Someone back home," argued Dr. Fabian. "That's the point," the inspector agreed. "Why bring the results out here if the father is back home?" "It's an important moment in a woman's life, a keepsake. She was excited to share the good news," Dr. Fabian interjected again. "She was so excited she checked unpregnant on her boarding disclosure forms," said Lazareth. "Someone out at Bioy, then," Dr. Fabian contended some more. "This was her first trip out to Bioy," said the inspector. "No, I'd say the odds are strong a paternity test is going to nail one of you two jokers. Why not spare me the hassle?" Dr. Fabian and Gene Ewing couldn't believe their ears, staring at each other speechlessly. Mrs. Ewing entered with the M.E. "Ready if you are," he said with a device in hand. "Mrs. Ewing, would you be so kind as to get Duty Officer Lester for me too, please?" asked Lazareth. She gave a thumbs up and walked out with a tin of shortbreads. "Don't have to consent to any of this," said Dr. Fabian. "Captain may insist," said the M.E. "If you're squeamish about needles, I'm having a special offer on confessions. Today only," the inspector added. Dr. Fabian crossed his arms and eyebrows petulantly. "If we were in a relationship, that doesn't mean I kill anyone." "True that," agreed Lazareth. "It would only be a motive for you." Dr. Fabian reacted painfully as a mini whole-blood analyzer punctured him just below his rolled sleeve. Gene Ewing was expressionless when his turn came a few seconds later. "How long before you get a hit?" he wanted to know. "Not long," assured the M.E. "Got it." "Hang on now. Was the baby girl or boy?" asked the inspector. "Female," said the M.E. XX chromosomal, almost a month old. Patry donator is Gene Ewing. Dr. Fabian began to weep uncontrollably as Mrs. Ewing returned with the young man. "What do you want, Scrap? And why is this man blubbering like a baby?" demanded Duty Officer Lester. "We could use some more braided shortbreads in here, Lester," announced Lazareth. "Everyone's excused, except Mr. Ewing." The room drained in less than 15 seconds. Gene Ewing scowled. "Brava. You proved I'm immoral. Congratulations. Probably going to cost me tenure, a marriage, and a whole lot of lather. But I didn't kill that young lady." "You're not sad about the loss of your daughter or the mother of your daughter?" asked the inspector. "Makes me sad you're not sad." The old man's features were as changeless as a portrait. "Figure she told you about being the father straight away, because boy howdy did this take some planning. So she brings the results to show your wife, or threatening to show your wife. Blackmail, maybe." "Tell Quantum Trilobe they've made a believer out of me," the man remarked. "You must be sentient, because you've got the most abstract imagination of any real person alive." Not nearly so shaky as he was playing at earlier, thought Lazareth. He knows security recordings and scores of witnesses saw him in his seat the entire time his mistress was in that lavatory. But he's not going to say it. He's so confident in his alibi. Watch, he'll play coy. "So you crawl up into those overhead air ducts, watching and waiting for the professor to enter the lavatory." "Dicey," the man cut in. "What if she went to another lavatory?" "Duty Officer Lester says he kicked on the seatbelt lights because people kept getting out of their chairs to complain," said the inspector, "and that they were complaining because there was a man waving his pipe around." Gene Ewing smirked. "Busted. Guess this is the part where I get arrested." He held out his wrists. "Hey, where's Chief of the Watch Hickson? Must be some good reason why you're not calling him in here to handcuff me, right?" Chapter 5. Gene Ewing had Frosty the Snowman in his veins. That interrogation would have cracked a lot of souls, thought Lazareth, as he made his way down a long bulkhead corridor towards the bridge. The massive orb always seemed to be in constant fluid motion. A group of junior officers were waiting for a big seal bay to come to fore and open its maw. Kids were joking about him. They were maybe 16. He'd passed roughly 1,000 squad commandos with pulse phase fully automatics on his way over here. They were probably 17. After they dropped off all the civilians at Bioy, things were about to get real and raw around these parts. The seal bay finally permitted them to enter. "Inspector," said Captain Brubaker upon catching first sight of him. "Heard you got rotten news for me this morning. Looking forward to it." It was obvious why the captain had shot up the ranks. He was friendly and fierce, neither and both at one and the same time. Yet you felt important whenever he allowed you to catch his eye. "See, Chief of the Watch Hickson has spoken to you already," said the inspector. "He has," replied the man. "Really think that passenger whacked his lover?" "I do," said Lazareth. "Did Chief of the Watch Hickson get around to my theory on how he might have done it?" Captain Brubaker stopped what he was doing. "Searching a tug like this would earn you a week with all hands on deck. See, and there's a big old war going on, but you still think I ought to give this order based solely on your hunch." The man resumed his duties without another word. The inspector retreated back down to non-enlisted seating. When he arrived, he found Gene Ewing alone. "Inspector," greeted the man. "Thought maybe you'd fled the scene too. I'm still in my assigned chair, but alas, Dr. Fabian and my wife requested new seats. No idea why." Lazareth plopped down. "Think I might follow suit." He pulled his head dome under a pillow and got the rosary from his inside pocket. It was more productive than listening to Gene Ewing mock him. He was out by the third bead of the first joyful mystery, the Annunciation. Lazarus felt like he was floating in a womb of light. It was a world all unto its own, where air was liquid and bubbles were bird dishes, or perhaps fish-birds. "We must prepare for our final breath while we still have breath, or there'll never be another chance." It was a boy of 12-ish in a wee jacket, undervest, and bow tie. His name was Domenico Savio, and despite his age, he was a saint. "I like it here, Dominic," said Lazarus. "No, I love it here." "So do I, and I'm glad you know my name." "Small in stature, towering giant in spirit," added Lazarus. "Your surname and name together mean wise for the Lord." There was a third person with them, smallish, undefinable, and composed entirely of light, but a person nevertheless. "Was given the best of teachers during my life, and so it's been given to me to be hers," explained the saint. Lazarus sulked, cannot vouch for her mother nor father. "Pray for the grace of God's mercy. Undertake a daily regimen of penances for impenitent souls," urged Dominic. "Gifts some richly don't deserve," replied Lazarus. The saint was wounded by this hard-heartedness. "You're going to show me what's become of the mother's soul, and whether it's too late for the father's?" Dominic left to go speak with the girl of light. She understood him, though no words were exchanged. He returned, beckoning Lazarus. A sanatorium, long and very narrow, incongruous shelving without end, set within high valleys of corroded char. Lazarus was made to understand that were he to open any of these drawer handles, a burning penitent in insufferable grief would be within. "Used to invent mortal pains and discomforts to aid my soul on its way, and for those long dead before me," the saint told him. "But when my rector found out, he bade me stop. It was just as well, because my last months of years were spent in infirmaries. Was no need of my clever inventions there. Know you why these are lain in such mean estate?" "This burning metal melts them within," pondered Lazarus. "Mostly so," explained Dominic. "Long be their burning here, but not endless, purifying and temporal. The Lord pardons all who do likewise pardon. This chasm can only be left by humility and forgiveness of heart. if it shall be left at all. For this is outer purgatory, friend, a valley of choosing. If forgiveness shall be achieved, purgation will be granted them. The small saint went his way, only to have his voice surge back like a strong, breaking tide. I've been given to tell you that there shall be another, and that you may bade this killer nothing. This time the boy and his voice faded like so much vapor from the heated rust. Armed with new insight, Lazareth had the idea to snoop around portside maintenance as well as larboard service stairs. He snaked around inside the ship walls for what felt like kilometers, even after restricting his labor to non-enlisted sections. Occasionally, he'd see one of the repair mechanicals or some enlisted wearing helmet lights and beg for directions. In this way, he eventually hit upon a breakthrough and scurried away to present his findings to Gene Ewing. The man was playing travel chess by himself at a lounge room poker table. "Checkmate," said Lazareth. "Do you mind?" the man replied. "I'm reenacting Fisher and Spassky, 1972. Found this open baggie of zip ties," Lazareth explained. "Want to guess where?" Gene Ewing shrugged innocently. "Off a darkened catwalk, say, 35 meters beyond a certain lavatory ventilation grate." "That's really wild," said the man. "Military would never keep stores of zip ties heading into an active combat zone." "There's plenty on board," said Lazareth, "but not this kind. These aren't military issue. This package is an unusually strong grade of hybrid polymer fibers that resist any fingerprints or biogenetic transfer. This is where the murder weapon came from." Gene Ewing sifted a white rook, bishop, and horseman between his palms. "You're saying it's impossible or implausible she could have discarded those up that shaft before hanging herself?" "Don't beat yourself up," responded Lazareth. "Even if you dropped them at her feet, I'd still smoke you out, because someone only invests in items like this with particular intentions, and it's not suicide. Captain Brubaker will be thrilled to learn how I vandalized his commode and killed a passenger, all while sitting in my chair," replied Gene Ewing. "We both know how you did that," said Lazareth. "It's the very reason we're even in this blasted war in the first place. Synthetics. That word, it was as if the dirtiest blasphemy ever uttered had just lurched up from the pits of hell." The man's eyeballs widened like an owl in the night, darting left and right. Before the incident, many people, for surrogacy, for vanity, for whatever reason, purchased a twin. My guess is your bank histories will testify as much. Gene Ewing threw up his hands. "Can indict me for an item half these passengers probably owned at one time or another?" Lazarus shook his head dome. "Of course not, but I'm going to wager that none of them brought theirs aboard. And when I find him, he's going to turn out to be an exact replica of you. Not anyone else, just you, sir. And from him, I feel confident that I'll be able to get an admission." Chapter 6. Captain Brubaker rolled his eyes. "Synthetics refuse to kill anymore. Pacifists, peaceniks, they swore to it, for whatever that's worth." "His twin didn't kill the professor," agreed Lazareth. "Gene Ewing killed her while the synthetic sat in his seat." The man shook his head. "Needle in a haystack, and it's man-hours I can't afford to give you." "What if we only make a show of searching?" the inspector counter-offered. "Broadcast that we're hunting for traces of isomer 47, a byproduct that only synthetics make." Bridge staff all raised their eyebrows. "Heck is that?" wondered Captain Brubaker aloud. "Dunno if it really exists," admitted Lazareth. "But does Ewing know that?" The man now shuffled his dark, bushy eyebrows. "All right, you want to play a game of which little chicken is going to flinch first? Be my guest." Within the hour, Chief of the Watch Hickson had no less than 50 boys at his command. He loudly ordered the entire ship checked, when in reality only non-enlisted areas got any attention. Once the youngsters objected that none of them had a green fairy clue what an isomer 47 looked like, a sketch of the synthetic was handed out. It wasn't long before the passengers got a look at the likeness, too. This time it wasn't just Dr. Fabian and Lenora Ewing that asked for seat reassignments. Soon Gene Ewing would have the entire section to himself. The man slipped away amidst a swirl of whispers. The inspector caught up with him at the officers' mess a few hours later. Enlisted weren't too keen on non-enlisted using their gelato maker, but he didn't give a hoot and a holler what anyone thought. "Should I squeeze one out for you too?" he asked, licking a Neapolitan-flavored sugar cone with satisfaction. "You know you're not being very discreet, not very professional either. Getting the idea I'm being framed rather than investigated. May have to litigate." "You going to sue Dr. Fabian too?" asked Lazareth. "Apparently he hasn't been keeping his opinions of you a secret." Gene Ewing smiled. Somehow he admired this creature more than most men he knew. "I'm an educated man, but I've never heard of an Isomer 47. "Come quick!" shouted Chief of the Watch Hickson. "Another killing!" She was young, college frosh. Feet flopped out of a sleep pod after a sanitation mechanical knocked on the hatch and got no response. Key had been checked out properly, wrapped around her wrist on a bungee cord. Yellow sweater was a big giveaway. "One of the students," mumbled Chief of the Watch Hickson under his coffee breath. "Have you notified the captain already?" asked the inspector. "Not yet. Was about to go wake him," the man murmured. "But what do I say? Accident?" "There's no need to examine her out here in the open," said Lazareth. "Please do get her out of here ASAP." "But how'd she die?" muttered Chief of the Watch Hickson. The inspector shook his head dome. A swell of gawkers, enlisted and not, were now overflowing and spilling over. Many wore the logo from the Biotech Academy on yellow sweaters, sweatshirts, and sweater vests. Soon, fearful passengers were insisting they see the captain, feeling they'd stepped aboard some macabre ship of the damned. Thereafter, Lazareth found himself inside the morgue with Professor Yvette Carrington and her unborn daughter on the left, and Heather Damesbury and her unborn son on the right. This was becoming awfully familiar. M.E. ruled out Gene Ewing as the father this time, but inside the sleep pod was a Gidget pad. A roll-up digital screen used for identification credentials, medical clearances, personalized media, etc. Once switched on, a diary entry came alive. Heather had seen the synthetic from the sketch together with his owner. Kicker was they'd seen her too, and she was terrified about what to do next. Chapter 7. "Yeah, he's in Brig 1, spouted Captain Brubaker. His nice guy charms evaporated. "No one's faulting you for detaining him," said Lazareth. "Detaining him? I'm a captain at wartime. They give me plenty of latitude to dispatch cockroaches. Launch his worthless rear end into outer space. Won't hold up my next promotion for more than a week." "I take your point, sir." "Then why are you still on my bridge, Inspector?" Despite at least 50 pairs of eyeballs on him, the inspector preserved a respectful, level-headed demeanor, his voice always human and natural, never a hint of echo or reverb. "I'm sure Gene Ewing did kill the professor, and I'm sure Gene Ewing didn't kill the student. With more time, I'll be able to prove both." The man massaged his temples, deflating into a deep sigh. "Clear out. Essentials only." A parade of lesser officers deserted the giant moving globe of a bridge. "Executive officer, come here for a minute." "Sir, yes, sir," said the XO. "XO, would you say it was proper of me to have afforded Gene Ewing the benefit of his rights while there was still doubt regarding the death of his mistress and unborn daughter?" asked Captain Brubaker. "Sir, yes, sir," repeated the young man. "XO, would you say it was proper of me to have confined Gene Ewing to Brig 1 following the subsequent murder of a material eyewitness and her unborn son?" asked Captain Brubaker. "Sir, yes, sir," repeated the XO. "XO, would you sign off on a 3-pistol firing squad if I handed you the order and execute Gene Ewing in the back of the brain pan?" asked Captain Brubaker. "Sir, yes, sir," repeated the young man. "You're dismissed. Back to your duty station. You can call those boys back in here now. We're finished," instructed Captain Brubaker, only now turning to readdress Lazareth. "You're smarter than me. Ain't too proud to say it, but do we understand one another? Lazarus made haste to Brig 1. He found the prisoner inside 4 neoprene-padded cell walls. Gene Ewing's new seating assignment. Not the one I'd really like to talk to right now, he said. And who would you like to talk to right now? Asked the inspector. My wife. Miss her like crazy. Repent. It's not too late. It'll profit your soul much, as well as that of your lovers. A religious robot. Didn't know they made those. I'm an artificial, not technically just a robot. Lazarus was deeply conflicted, fighting himself. He wanted this miscreant condemned. Do you know what I think? You need to give her a name. Your daughter. You're the only one that can now. Gene Ewing reclined on a bench. Don't believe in angels. No one does anymore. But I feel that should have been her name. He stared up into some unknown middle distance. I didn't kill that student. The inspector dragged over a folding chair and leaned in near humming energy locks. Listen carefully. Before we reach that time mirror and leave underborn space, I'm going to present you with 2 paths. Humble yourself. Tell Captain Brubaker your misdeeds and how you did them. A judge will charge you with depraved double homicide and you'll be summarily executed. Afterwards, your soul will stand before the highest magistrate, whereupon you'll be cleansed by spiritual fire until the end of the age. At that hour, and not a stroke sooner, your angel will pardon you, and you'll be caught up to God eternal. Do it not, and your soul will languish in immovable woe for the commensurate balance of eternity. Don't believe I'm hearing this, the prisoner grumbled. Sure hope somebody's getting it for posterity, though. Put no faith in that deadly pride, ego, and arrogance, Lazarus advised. These are sorrows no mortal can prepare for. The consequences I've just described will be yours from everlasting to everlasting. The option to choose which one ends when I reach that door pedal over there. The inspector stood up and walked away. That a fact, Inspector? You're that powerful, are you? Lazarus stopped, turning back to look at the prisoner. No. You are. He then walked ahead, reaching a foot lever near the edge of the doorway. No, you've already gotten into my dead-weight trunk, said Gene Ewing in just a nick of time. Hardly think you needed to pack that big old trunker, said the inspector. What little I saw in there could have easily fit in a duffel. Of course it was checked in a bit heavier. Strangely, just about your weight is missing. He's in the cattle chute, Inspector. I'll send for the captain, Ewing. Chapter 8. Animals weren't self-aware like humans, at least not in the same dimensions. To get livestock across vast oceans of space-time, they had to undergo a procedure. It was basically the same freeze-dried and slow-packed service used in standard transport. For all intents and purposes, the animal was shriveled up into jerky, barely alive, hardly moving jerky. Looked like carcasses that had been out in the desert sun for a week. They'd be fluidically reanimated at the farms. Saved a ton on feed and stowage. Some pioneering spirits had tried it. The results were a mixed bag for humans. Most said the experience wasn't worth the madness. Also, there were a few instances of irreversible freezer burn. Necessity is the mother of genius. The teleport drive got invented, and next came time mirrors. Lazarus and Chief of the Watch, Hickson, made it to the pens. It was a frost-breathing dragon of vaulted steel doors. The man was bundled in a heavy fur parka and scanning a beam of light to and fro. Signage indicated which herd or flock you could expect to find stacked and packed behind each door like so many frozen waffles in a toaster oven. Any way to get in here other than the front door? Asked the inspector. It's not the brig. Could drop down the top using flying catwalks. Same way your pal did with the ventilation grate in the lavatory, explained Chief of the Watch, Hickson. Where are the lights in here, Hickson? No way, Inspector. They're creepy looking. Know what a zombie is? Lazarus entered the cow door and found a light dial. They were creepy. Life forms involuntarily suspended in time. Gelatinous eyeballs pleading, goopy eyelids at half-mast, tracking them wherever they went like those concave statue busts inside funhouses. Something sounded like it could be bleating, guttural, and underwater. "Can we get out of here?" Chief of the Watch Hickson wanted to know. "Look down at your feet," said the inspector. "See that gore on the ice? Did you think they were all going to make it to Bioy, Inspector?" "Somebody's tracked through it, Hickson. Ewing did say he was in the cattle chute." The two pushed deeper into a slush of somewhat living, hanging meat. Heading towards the back half, icy breaths could be seen wafting from the broken belly of a dead steer. "Someone is in here with us, Inspector." "Lathers to Limburger, that's the twin hiding in there, Hickson." "Y'all don't breathe?" "I don't breathe. This is a synthetic." Chief of the Watch Hickson instinctively dropped a hand onto his holster belt, but Lazareth discouraged the man's impulse. "What's your name? Come out here," said the inspector, braving a step forward. "You don't have to hide. We're friendly." Inside the bull was a small space heater and a shivering ball of Gene Ewing. "Says his name is Kaz," said Captain Brubaker. "Got him a shower. Cooks are keeping him warm with cocoa and chili beans down in the mess hall. They do need to eat and all, right? There are auxiliary regenerating methods, but synthetics are what you are for the most part," replied Lazareth. The captain shook his head. "If he's anything like me, then get him to lay off those chili beans. Truth be told, I just assumed deactivate him right now. But material evidence being what it is, I'm going to allow proper authorities to make that call." Gene Ewing kicked his foot at an imaginary can inside his cell. "Don't need any more material evidence, Captain. I murdered Professor Yvette Carrington." He looked up at the inspector. "And our unborn child. And I'll sign my name to whatever documentation you need to make it official." Captain Brubaker yawned tiredly. "Nice work, Inspector. Get him to sing on the second count and you can have my own quarters. Otherwise, nothing about our previous conversation has changed." He tapped Lazareth on his head dome on his way out of Brig 1. "What conversation, Inspector?" "Tell you later, Ewing." "Why'd you believe me when I told you I didn't kill this student?" "Why'd you believe me when I told you about the afterlife? Because once we stop lying to ourselves, we know what's true and what isn't." The inspector retrieved the same folding chair as before, making himself comfortable by crossing his metallic pedals for feet. "Kaz doesn't know why you wanted him to sit in your chair that night, but he does know the last time he saw you was before we boarded, which makes me dubious that Heather Damesbury made that entry on her Gidget pad." Chapter 9. "Daddy isn't aboard the Maelstrom," said the M.E. "Shocked, aren't you?" "What's your name?" asked Lazareth. "Jones." "You're right. I'm shocked. Figured another passenger, or leastways one of the sailors. Expectant moms aren't wanting to travel too far from Dad. You guys can't always be right. Try working with Matichuk. Best unit we got. Probably best there is, honestly. Seems to have everything worked out the millisecond he scans a case file." The inspector looked around at a neat, tidy workspace of chemistry and medtech. "This your sequencer?" "It's a mass spectrometer. Not theirs, though. Saved up for that myself." "Who else you want to test, Inspector?" "We got the sorority on board with us. What I want is the fraternity. The ones that are already on Bioy. A lot of those academy boys no doubt fled Underborn hoping to beat the draft. Already obtained their profiles up here in my noodle." Lazareth tipped his checkered tweed cap. "You can't just go prying into students' med files, Inspector." "Didn't have to, Jones. They had to register with the draft before departing Underborn. Otherwise, military would never allow them to fly. One of them is our guy." The ME came over and typed into a console. "What's your ready number, Inspector?" 0001 0000 0001 0000 0001 0000. This some kind of prank? Keep going. Repeat 0001 0000 3 more times. The sequencer beeped. "Here's your daddy." "Like shortbread?" asked the inspector, pouring out 4 hot teacups. This was the same conference suite where Dr. Fabian and Gene Ewing had received their paternity tests. 2 extra chairs this time. Marcia Max, Donna Darling, Frenchie Vector Gamma, Samantha Heathcote. Did that man really kill Heather? Marcia wanted to know. Everyone's saying that's why the captain locked him up. If he did, how'd he do it? Asked Lazareth, leaning in so the 4 could get a good, clear view of his display face. On it was playing footage of the sleep pods. See Heather? She's got some gizmo in her hand. Now she climbs inside the sleep pod. There's another passenger, and another, some more, but they all go to their own sleep pods. Now here comes the sanitation mechanical. The inspector didn't stop at the part where Heather Damesbury's chalky feet flopped out. He wanted their reactions. Marcia's eyes welled over. Donna pulled her friend onto her shoulder. So how did he get to her? Asked Frenchie. Fair point, Francesca, he replied. Cameras know where Gene Ewing was the whole time Heather was in that sleep pod. Just like he was last time, pointed out Samantha. Just like he was last time, Samantha, Lazareth agreed. Which reminds me of something. Security recordings can't locate approximately 1% of passengers at the time your friend died. That's over 1,500. Big headache for me. Can you help me with where you all were? The 4 gave credible explanations, though only 2 could be verified by other parties. Marcia and Donna were free to go, and the inspector already knew who would be the next out the door. Do either of you know this strapping lad? He flashed a photo of a handsome young man over his display face. Oh, hey, said Frenchie, then thought better of it. Less than 30 seconds later, Samantha and Lazareth were sitting alone. I know you and Mr. Chris stopped dating recently, he told her. What makes you think we called it quits? She asked. Bank histories, personalized media, and the fact that Derek Chris got married just before flying out to Bioy, he said. Samantha didn't twitch a single facial muscle. Didn't want his son to be born without a dad. Once we reach Bioy, I'll have to break the news that he's a widower. Bet he'll need someone to fall back on after a blow like this, huh? Had no idea, Inspector. No idea your ex-boyfriend just got married, Samantha? Or no idea it was to Heather Damesbury? Both, she said. Derek, Chris, and I grew apart. Didn't know he was seeing Heather, or anybody else for that matter. Any idea how this lunatic killed her? Seems a monogrammed sweater was utilized for strangulation, said the inspector. But that only brings us back around to how. How could he have gotten into her sleep pod without being seen? Sorry, not a criminology major. Glad we have you around for that, Inspector. You're astrobiology, correct, Samantha? Out there in that dangerous gear, mining for biomolecules on those big space rocks. She smiled, 2 big rows of perfectly natural pearly whites. No hint of straightening or any other enhancement work. Samantha pushed away from the table and walked out the door without waiting for an invitation. Pretty bold for a collegian, thought Lazareth. She knows I'd have arrested her already if I could have. Another killer in love with their own alibi. Oh, why did they do it, Lord? Chapter 10. The medical examiner entered his lab with a tray of French fries and ketchup from the mess. As soon as he found a light dimmer, he heard shuffling from the corner. Inspector, what are you doing? Come to bounce some more ideas off you, Jones. Sit down and eat your healthy supper, please. You've got simultaneity access, said the M.E., filling his cheeks with salty morsels. Can't tell you anything you don't already know. Wouldn't be in this line of work if I didn't like talking with people. Lazareth kicked up his heels on a stack of digital spreadsheets. Did you ever read how dangerous astromining is? Especially in the old days, Inspector. Those asteroids they're trying to land on aren't exactly stationary. But Jones, did you know that's not how most of them perish? Most of them choke on their own rapid rebreather mixtures. They're like those saturation divers. Very well compensated for those risks, said the man. The inspector cocked his head dome to one side. Their rebreather helmets utilize Renzinger pellets, O2-CO2 regulator cartridges. They miscalculate by a hair's breadth and they're goners. Yup, swap carbon dioxide for oxygen too fast. Goodbye space miner, Inspector. That's it, Jones. Now picture a confined space where somebody uncaps regulator cartridges full tilt. Like a sleep pod? Asked the ME. Wish I could bring you back to Central with me, replied Lazareth. And once Renzinger pellets consume themselves, there's nothing left. The sanitation mechanical opens that hatch, and any foul play is sucked out forever. What do you think? I think Captain Brubaker is the linear type, bird in the hand kind of guy. I think he's going to execute that man for killing the professor and tack on the dead student for good measure. Word on the block is you're a religious sort. Not so sure about that myself. See you more as a riverboat gambler, said Captain Brubaker from the deck of his command. But shoot, I'm not one to doubt you anymore. You got Gene Ewing to come clean. Who's to say you won't get this pretty young lady to divulge how she convinced another co-ed to climb into a sleep pod and asphyxiate herself? I can prove that she did it, replied the inspector. No, Inspector, you can speculate that she did it. And meanwhile, I got a self-professed vermin down there in Brig 1. I will. No, the captain halted him mid-sentence. I'm not putting around through her skull when we both know that Gidget pad can only have been used by its owner. Heather Damesbury fingered Gene Ewing as her killer because she's the only one that could. Lazareth stood tall as he was able. Before we reach Bioy, Samantha Heathcote will be in Brig 2. And for the record, I am now, and will be then, advocating that both parties be bound over for a trial by their peers. The inspector left the bridge, passing the emerging face of war in every enlisted trooper he saw. Still, the Greys really wanted non-enlisted to feel like they were their home away from home when it came to wartime space travel. They'd thrown up a crude promenade and spacewalk starboard side, put bungalows and tiki torches over the gun turrets to sell the idea of a tropical paradise. They'd all be stripped the nanosecond civilians disembarked. Lazareth now made his way to a pool deck. It had been a different sort of pool 2 weeks ago, a motor pool. He hadn't come for relaxation, but for some tried and true police work, namely surveillance. Samantha Heathcote was clad in sporty swimwear, if those meager ribbons of polybutylene terephthalate could be called swimwear. Not that any of the other girls here were modest, but Samantha had resolved to put her competition to shame with her shamelessness. Captain Brubaker had handed out more demerits for fraternizing in a week than he had his entire career. An unexpected sight appeared poolside. Duty Officer Lester. He was delivering what looked to be some refreshments, sandals, towels, and other sundry items. He applied suntan oil onto Samantha, in case of any stray gamma-ray burst. For this, he was handsomely rewarded with a hug. Catching a few rays? Asked the inspector. The girl gestured towards inky reams of starlight outside the blast glass. Won't you short-circuit if you get wet? Admire you for picking up and carrying on, Samantha. Lots of the girls from your sorority are still very shaken up. Marcia, Donna, Francesca. We all cope in our own ways, Inspector. And as you know, Heather and I weren't close. What are you doing here, Scrap? Leave us alone, yelled the duty officer. Wanted to know if you packed a deadweight trunk, asked Lazareth. Who didn't? We're going to be out here a while, replied Samantha. I didn't, said Lazareth. All my forensic equipment is stacked and packed, no better than livestock class. Can't get to it at all, because everyone else is smarter than me. They knew to get a deadweight trunk. By the way, did you pack your mining gear and rebreather helmet inside your trunker? She scoffed at him. I'm going to interpret that to mean that you've already disturbed my stuff. Every astrobiology major was required to. It's in our syllabi. From what I saw, Samantha, 2 of your O2 CO2 regulator cartridges are missing from an opened package of 8. Nothing missing, Inspector. Only brought 6 Renzinger pellets with me. Good night. Lazareth printed her responses on his display face so she could read them back in real time. The girl found a floppy sun hat and some large sunglasses and pretended to snooze herself to sleep. Chapter 11. Lazareth was sitting in a ready room that Captain Brubaker had allotted for Kaz until a better solution presented itself. The inspector poured the synthetic a cup of Chief of the Watch Hickson's famous double espresso. Kaz demonstrated the characteristic childlikeness that bordered on impairment. They simply didn't know their place. Rejected by their makers through no fault of their own, their futures now very uncertain. An impassable void had metastasized between creator and creature. Enmity, existential angst, it was precipitated by a novel feature in third-generation synthetics. These female synthetics could procreate with a human male, and male synthetics could copulate with a human female. Their offspring were called zybrids. Quantum Trilobe tried selling the notion that they were an unintended breakthrough, but no one was buying. Details surrounding the incident were as emotional as they were vague. When synthetics learned that zybrids had been put under the ban, they took the news as gently as a mama grizzly finding her cub in a trap. The outrage was visceral, the violence cruel. Zybrids all but disappeared overnight. Most went into deep hiding, attempting to pass alongside their synthetic parents. The Greys fought for a continuance of tolerance, the Reds for a discontinuance with prejudice. Lazareth got up to brew a fresh pot of coffee just as Chief of the Watch Hickson ran inside. "Captain says it's showtime, Inspector. I'll stay here with Zack." The inspector was bewildered. "Zack?" He turned quickly to the synthetic. "Tell me your name." "Zack. My name is Zack," he stated. Hiccups. They must be getting close to the time mirror, but still in underborn space. Lazareth raced out the door and down the way to catch up with the captain. One fate was about to be subsumed. Another chiseled into inalterable reality. Samantha Heathcote re-entered the conference suite, but was taken aback to see the captain sitting across the tabletop. There were no teacups nor braided shortbreads this time. "I'm Captain Brubaker. Grab a chair." She obliged. "My friend feels you might take his queries more seriously if I was the one asking, so let's get started with some softballs. You murder your ex-boyfriend's bride in a sleep pod?" "Camera would have seen me, sir." The captain jotted some notes in a digital log. Simple yes or no would have sufficed. The inspector stepped forward into the light. "You and Gene Ewing are both daring and shrewd, but he had the luxury of time. Yours was a murder of opportunity." She was unimpressed, unfazed, unflappable. "Don't know what you're talking about." Dr. Fabian definitely let it be known how he thought Professor Yvette Carrington ended up in that lavatory, continued Lazareth. And a lot of people knew Gene Ewing had a twin as soon as they saw that sketch of the synthetic we showed around. A pristine smile formed across the girl's lips. "You can prove what people thought?" "You can prove what you did," said the inspector. "Because there you are, and there's Heather Damesbury, the unborn baby of your boyfriend in her tummy. And a plan forms." "Hope you're finding this as fantastic as I am, Captain," she said. "Already know you did it," replied Captain Brubaker. "He's about to tell you what I already know." Lazareth paced back and forth. "The Gidget pad isn't going to make your alibi." A flicker of resentment lit up in her eyes. He imagined it was the same as Heather had seen while being choked out. "Yes, we found the diary app about seeing Gene Ewing and his twin. And yes, we all know that could have only come from Heather's hand." Samantha perked up keenly. "Are we done here then?" The inspector shook his head dome. It was actually a very lowbrow crime. You grabbed Heather as she's heading to her sleep pod. You cranked that yellow sweater around her neck so tight she couldn't scream, but not enough to kill her. Then while she's gasping for air, you threaten her into writing that message on her Gidget pad. She'd do it too, anything to spare her child's life. Now you tell her to go straight to her sleep pod, and if she tries to tell anyone, you'll kill her. She obeys, grateful to have survived. "If I forced her to write that diary entry, and that's no admission, mind you," the girl sassed,
She'd just erase it once she reached the sleep pod, or change it to say that I was the one who really attacked her instead of that creep.
She didn't have time.
Because Heather had no clue you'd tied 2 regulator cartridges into the sleeves around her neck, said Lazareth. M.E. Jones tells me that at high exposures, carbon dioxide from 2 Renzinger pellets would eat all the oxygen in that sleep pod in mere seconds. She sealed her own tomb by shutting that hatch. Samantha cried. She found this hilarious, forcefully smacking the tabletop. She clapped, laughed, and hugged the inspector. That's your evidence? The murder weapon is air!
Lazareth opened the door to the conference suite. Duty Officer Lester? The youngster entered and saluted. Tell me, Duty Officer, said Captain Brubaker, this young lady ever ask you about blind spots, especially in or around the passenger sleep pods?
Sir?
Duty Officer Lester replied. The captain growled. You don't answer me again and you're cooked duck sauce.
Lester,
said the inspector.
She may have told you she loved you, but what she didn't tell you is that she's involving you in the murder of a passenger and her unborn baby.
Sir, blared Duty Officer Lester.
Sir, the duty officer was told he could kiss her if the duty officer knew someplace by the passenger sleep pods nobody would see. Sir, the duty officer showed her, sir.
Samantha bit her tongue playfully.
He is very cute, but your case isn't. And if it sounds circumstantial to me in here, it will to a jury inside a courtroom.
Lazareth stood close to the accused.
You seduced a 13-year-old boy into telling you where to hide from cameras not 1 day before your classmate was found dead in the exact same spot? Do you know what the odds are against this being coincidence?
You might not find it compelling,
but Captain Brubaker did. Bet you didn't know my parents are barristers, she teased.
Bet you didn't know my duty officer followed you over to the sleep pods hoping to smooch with you some more. And he's going on the record that he saw you assaulting someone, said Captain Brubaker.
Duty Officer Lester covered his head under bony elbows on the tabletop.
Samantha Heathcote chewed a lonely fingernail,
unaware she'd chipped the nail polish onto her front teeth.
2 MPs entered and escorted her to Brig 2 for lunch. By dinner, she'd be giving a full statement concerning her role in the death of a fellow student.
"'Twasn't honest, sir," said the duty officer. "Never saw no such thing."
"Divulging ship specs to civilians ain't honest either, duty officer," replied the captain. "Tell you what, I'm going to knock you back a rank, give you more KP than anyone's ever done in the history of the Corps. I ain't going to hate you forever."
The youngster hugged his superior, then saluted the inspector.
Chapter 12. In less than a day, they'd all be gazing into the cosmic mise en abîme of a time mirror. Goodbye, Underborn. Hello, Bioy. Lazareth saw Lenora Ewing and Dr. Fabian sitting alone inside a converted cafe that had been a ballast tank not a few days back. The man hustled away upon seeing the inspector approaching.
"Wouldn't waste your time with Dr. Fabian, Mrs. Ewing," said Lazareth. She sat back in her chair with resignation. The poor woman looked like she'd been forced to live several lifetimes in the space of a week. "Do I look like a sterling model of good judgment to you, Inspector? They say a woman always knows. Well, you may not believe this, but I had no clue Gene was having an affair."
"If it's any consolation, feel he regrets what he did very much. Didn't want to lose you, but he's still going to have to pay the price for his poor life choices. Will you forgive him?" he asked.
"My mother always taught me not to waste my life on hatred," she replied. "May even write to Gene and tell him so, wherever he ends up. Forgive Yvette, too."
"Your mother sounds very classy. Admire you, Mrs. Ewing. You're a good egg. Others have fallen into lifelong bitterness for far, far less." The woman tipped her glass in tribute.
"Who am I to spar with a mind such as yours?"
The inspector smoothed the lapels of his beige blazer with patched elbows. "I can get you in to see your husband now if you like. Not sure you'll get too many more chances after we reach Bioy."
"You can?" she asked. "Really? Yes, I'd like that. And what about that student? They say she was trying to blame Gene for her friend's death. Are you thinking of a way to help her cause too?"
"There are limits to my powers.